What's up, Madridistas? This is Kiyan Sobhani. Happy Friday. Got a little treat for you guys heading into the weekend. I've compiled clips from two podcasts that went up today and yesterday. So part one of this segment is a discussion between Lucas Navarrete and I on yesterday's mailbag that went up over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid. In this clip in particular, Lucas and I talk about what would we do if given the keys to everything Real Madrid roster related. We could choose the coach, the transfers, departures, arrivals, loans, promotions. Of course, within reason. We don't go all out and build an 11 of the reincarnation of Di Stefano, the return of Zinedine Zidane, the return of Cristiano Ronaldo and Sergio Ramos. We can't do that. But within reason and realistic options, we give our opinions. That's something we rarely do. We kind of just talk about what the board does and what the board will do and what we know. So we do that. And then part two of this segment is taken from the Churros y Tácticas patron podcast that went up today over on patreon.com/Churros y Tácticas. A lot of you guys listen to Churros, and if you don't, this could be a little taste of what you get. It might entice you, it might not, doesn't matter. It's just a little bonus thing that's happening on this podcast. So in that segment, in that part two, we talk about where Carlo Ancelotti ranks all time among coaches. And we also talk about a random question that came in, which was Jese or Ansu Fati? Who was better as the budding young star? So we get into that as well. Thanks for listening, guys. Just some quick housekeeping as well. Matt and I are going to record the post-game show for the Espanyol game. That'll go up tomorrow night. And then on Sunday, we got Ryan O'Hanlon coming on of ESPN FC, Supreme Liverpool fan, friend of the show. You guys know him well by now. He is going to come on to help us preview the Liverpool game. And that one on Sunday will go on Patreon. So make sure you're subscribed to everything so you don't miss a beat. And enjoy today's clip. Happy Friday. Happy weekend. Let's get it. Enjoy. All right, so we got a bunch of questions to go through, and a lot of it is kind of about squad construction and transfers. That seems to be the theme this week. The dialogue on social media, the dialogue on managingmadrid.com with the articles that have gone up, and the dialogue of the questions, very similar. So we're going to talk about squad construction mostly, and what's the plan here for Real Madrid, and maybe a little bit of a niche thing is that what would we do? Which is not something we always talk about. We kind of talk about like what Real Madrid would do, is doing. But we're going to throw some of our opinions in here today as well because the questions require them from us. So our first question is from Patrick Udaya Fadi. He says, "Hi, Kiyan and Lucas. I hope you're both well. I'd like to hear both your answers to this scenario. Fast forward to the end of the season. We don't win any trophies. We lose La Liga by double digits, lose to Barcelona in the Copa del Rey, and get dumped out of the Champions League in the quarterfinals. Carlo gets sacked. If it was up to you, what coach do you bring in? You're allowed to make 5 big decisions on the squad. Player recruitment, current player contracts, renewing them, selling them, diminishing current stars to lesser roles, etc. What would they be? How could you make Real Madrid a more consistent team next year by way up performances over the summer? Of course, being as realistic as possible and what is in our capabilities."
Considering that this is up to me and not what we predict the club is going to do, I would probably go with either Tuchel or Klopp as the coach. And about the 5 big decisions, I would not sign Modric to an extension. I would not sign Kroos to an extension. I bring back Brahim. I sign a center forward. It's tough for next summer. You name him. If you consider that Mbappe is within Real Madrid's reach, then I would probably go after him. Even though I'm obviously not happy with what went on last summer. I think he would be a bit more attainable than Haaland next summer. So maybe that would be my target. And the 5th one, I probably sign a capable right back. I would probably go really, really hard after Reece James, but knowing that he would probably not be available, I would just, I don't know, I would just send Juni Calafat to find the best right back out there.
The right back one was the toughest for me to look at because there's literally zero interesting options. There are just options. And then it put it this way, I think the options are so uninteresting that Vinicius Tobias might be worth looking at. That's how uninteresting the options are to me. Like, we don't have like a Fran Garcia to bring back for the right back slot, or like an expiring free agent like this summer that is really interesting. I gave it a shot anyway. And Reece James, I did not consider realistic. Otherwise, if I could if I could do anything and play FIFA, I'd bring in Reece James as number one option. But I didn't find that a realistic opportunity, so I did not list him. But here's what I did. And I kind of came to the conclusion that I don't think the roster needs a huge overhaul. I think it needs some tweaks and some upgrades. And I think it's not that far away from being a great squad because it is deep in certain positions. I wrote about Modric and Kroos and all the expiring contracts today. So if anyone wants my thoughts, they're on managingmadrid.com on the homepage. The biggest question I asked about Modric and Kroos is essentially, I think it's on some level, it's a no-brainer to renew them for 1 year because they've earned it and they're still playing well. But the bigger question to me is, would you rather have 1 year of Modric and Kroos or 5 years of Ceballos or 10 years of Bellingham? Because it might actually come down to a small decision like that.
Yep.
If you like what you've seen from Ceballos, and I do, and I personally feel like he fits with the timeline of the young, dynamic players, he himself may look at Modric and Kroos getting renewed and just decide, I'm out of here. There's no point.
Yeah.
So that you have to start thinking about, though. Those are hard questions to ask and hard questions to answer. But I ultimately, I think, came to the conclusion that as much as I love Bellingham, he's not an essential signing. And this is what I did, essentially. I just kind of thought about it. And with regards to coach, I guess I'll leave that for the end. But I'd sell Vallejo, Odriozola. I would not renew Asensio. I would not renew Mariano. I would sell Hazard. I don't know if that's a realistic thing, but I would go. I would try my best, every ounce of energy I can, find solutions, see if I can pay half his salary, dump him somewhere until for a year or two, like we did with Bale. Although Bale was a much more appealing prospect for like a Tottenham than Hazard is to anyone right now. We had high hopes for Newcastle coming in, but the problem is that they're ahead of schedule with how good they are, and I don't think they would care to pay any money for Hazard. So that those options are off the table. But I would try my damn hardest and maybe even try to convince them to, like, hey, go to the Middle East or somewhere like that. And I would probably die trying. I would probably fail, but I would try. So Hazard, and this one is a little bit touchy, maybe, but I would sell Vasquez too, because if he's a barrier in bringing in a right back, then sell him, and then between him and Carvajal, keep Carvajal just only for veteran presence and leadership and a backup right back option in games that you might need him or maybe need some more defense or something. That's what I would do. I would renew Modric, Kroos, Ceballos, and basically go into next season again with 6 midfielders for 3 positions. Tchouaméni, Camavinga, Fede, Modric, Kroos, and Ceballos. I think that's a good safety net to have, but I would decrease the playing time of Modric and Kroos while doing so. I think those are the people I would sell. So here's who I would bring in. And the name I have as number 1 in this is, some people are going to get really mad at me for saying this. I actually come getting mad at myself for saying this. But if you can do it this summer, try to get Mbappe in again. I know. Yeah. I know it's a lot of people have him on the unforgivable list. If you can do it, do it. And I know that's a frustrating thing to say because he's after what happened last summer, but maybe the concoction of what happened to them, the elimination The fact that Mbappe is looking around and probably thinking like it's never going to happen here. These guys are completely have no idea what they're doing. They're not building the squad that's needed. They're not really giving me the control they wanted. I would bring him in if possible. And then loan out Alvaro Rodriguez, renew Benzema. So you have Benzema and Mbappe, with Benzema probably coming off the bench. And then Mbappe starting up top, being interchangeable with Vinicius. You got Rodrigo there too, obviously. So you have, and then in addition to not renewing Asensio, I'd do a combination of two things: bring back Brahim and promote Arribas full time as an option too. Sometimes starter, sometimes off the bench. And the right back slot is really, really challenging. Still is, even if you make room and get rid of Vasquez or somebody, or Carvajal, one of those two. No one that's expiring this year at the right back position is interesting to me. Cancelo is no longer interesting because his contract actually doesn't end until 2027. I don't really have any interest in taking that over. It was appealing for a 6-month rental, but not now. And so that gives you two options. Really one option. Promote Vinicius Tobias. But the thing is, I think you have to do that now. I think you have to promote him now just to see for the last remaining games in La Liga, see how good he is at the 18 level. So that you can at least make the decision whether you want to trigger that 15 million or not in the summertime. Then I was looking at the free agents, the right backs that are expiring in 2024, and seeing that maybe you could offer those guys and those clubs an offer because those clubs are losing them for free and they're a little bit older. There's two names that stood out. Again, not that exciting names. So brace yourselves. I'm not proposing Cafu and Javier Zanetti. Kyle Walker expires in 2024. Could you offer him a 1 or 2 year deal to come in and rotate with Carvajal? Doesn't necessarily solve your offensive issues, but it's just a body. The other one is Benjamin Pavard, who maybe provides you with a decent goal scoring presence. Both Kyle Walker and Pavard are capable progressive passers. I don't know how much Bayern love Pavard anyway, so they may be open to like a low ball offer on an expiring contract. Those are the two names I came up with. And then if you get one of those, maybe you can loan out Tobias, like re-sign and loan out. Or if Castilla gets to Segunda, just put him in Segunda playing every game.
Yeah.
And then finally for coach, maybe it's a bit of recency bias, but it's not realistic as Nagelsmann. I don't think Bayern would let him go, or he would be necessarily interested in leaving the Bayern project right now. So I would probably just promote Raul. Tuchel I love, as I said yesterday on the Q&A Zoom podcast. Tuchel I love, but have huge question marks about him managing egos. And I think all the chips ultimately fall on Raul's lap. So that's what we're looking at here.
Yeah.
Was that too long-winded? I wonder if anyone actually even understood what I said, or was it just blabbering? Did you get it? So to summarize, out.
Yeah.
Out Vallejo, Odriozola, Asensio, Mariano, Hazard, Vasquez. Loan out Alvaro, Vinicius, Tobias. Bring in Mbappe, one of Walker or Pavard. And that's it. And promote Arribas and bring back Brahim.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. Next question. Tough one, Lucas, for me anyway. Ranta asks, if it was possible, would you rather get Alphonso Davies over Bellingham this summer? How much would you be willing to spend to get him if you were in charge of the club?
it depends. To me, it depends on whether or not you're actually getting a decent offer for Mendy. If you're able to get, I don't know, 40, 50 million, 30 even for Mendy, maybe I would make Davies a target. I don't think it's that realistic, though. I think obviously Bayern are very excited about Davies as a player overall,
Yeah, he's not
rightfully
leaving.
so. Yeah, he's not leaving, but for the sake of argument, if I were able to get, I don't know, 30, 40 million for Mendy, I would probably make Davies a priority if he were to leave for, I don't know, 80 or something like that. Maybe if the net spend of this whole operation would be somewhere close to 50, 60 million, with Mendy leaving and Davies coming, obviously Fran Garcia being the backup, I would probably pull the trigger, yeah. But again, this is only for the sake of argument because we can all agree on this on the fact that Davies is not leaving next summer.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not a realistic question. So the answer doesn't have to be realistic, in my opinion, because Davies is not leaving Bayern. Um, Everyone will already know I have very clear bias in answering this question. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to know that I am biased for an obvious reason. In my lifetime, I never thought there would be a day where a Canadian would be good enough to play for Real Madrid. Apart from me, and when I was 10, I had the dream of playing for Real Madrid. I came just short. I almost made it. But Davies is good enough to fit that role, but it would be contingent on you lose either Mendy or Fran in that situation.
Yeah.
But man, Bellingham is really good too. Davies is really good. Davies, in some ways, feels a little bit more of a rare commodity because wing backs right now are extremely precious in football. If you get a world class fullback, because they're not that abundant, so it feels like he's a scarce resource in some way. One thing that maybe would tip me in favor of Bellingham over Davies, if I had a gun to my head, would be Davies. I'm scared of Davies's body breaking down at some point. I don't know. There's just been some health scares with him in the past. That's one thing that would scare me with him. But it's a great question. I'd pick Davies if I had the choice for bias reasons, but also Bellingham obviously would be a great asset to have. But of the two, Bellingham is more realistic. I think like as we're having this conversation, I'm starting to wake up a little bit. I feel like in some ways, some of this conversation actually discredits him because, like, for example, when you say, he wasn't maybe necessarily attack oriented, he has been based on the squad he has. And I think that has to be something that is looked upon as an impressive feat because, like, for example, Real Madrid 2014, 2015.
Like when I'm starting to wake up a little bit. I know how to press the buttons, Kiyan, to keep the churros going. It's Friday, baby. Get the electricity pumping.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel the jolt.
Get the juices flowing.
So I'm also fasting, but that's a different discussion. But I'm a little bit low energy for that reason. But the fact that with that 2014-2015 team, when his midfield was Kroos, a younger Modric, plus Isco and James, that team was extremely attack-oriented, possession, high pressing. A year before, when it was required of him, when he had BBC up front and he had to play against Pep's Bayern, he was counterattacking. And I think that should be something. Most coaches are hell-bent on playing one way. And Carlo has never been like that. And that's, I think, part of the reason he has been successful. And so I don't think it's a matter of him not being it's attacking oriented. It's a matter of he is when he feels like his squad is able to do so. And when he feels like a different approach will work, he will use a different approach. I think that should be noted. I also want to talk about just tacticians in general and stuff. In some respect, overvalued in football. Just a smidge, because a lot of these guys who are better tacticians than him, and I don't know like who that person is necessarily off the top of my head, but obviously they exist. Let's put it this way: if there's like a lot of quote unquote self-proclaimed tacticians on Twitter, right? You could like if someone like was like the most genius tactician ever, he like wrote something, he drew it up, he's like, this is how we win. That's not going to work because no one is going to be able to buy into whatever that person is saying. So the ability to get players to buy in is something that Carlo has and that not all coaches have. And that has to be respected. And as I'm talking about this, like, why not top 5, really? Like, who are the 5? Who are like the 6 who would be ahead of him to put him number 7 is the question. You know what I mean? I'd be curious to know what that list is. I don't know if I could name 6 who are definitively better than him all time. Like, why can't we put him in the conversation? Again, I'm not putting him ahead of like someone like Sir Alex Ferguson, but to me, like the short list is, and forgive me if I'm forgetting anyone, but it's something like, you got to talk about Ferguson, Pep, Mourinho, Carlo, Zidane. You
put him over Wenger.
Wenger, another one. I don't know. Like I'm just. Who else? Once we can start talking about like the much older managers, like the Renus Michaels, the Miguel Munoz,
Renus Michels,
Arrigo Sacchi.
Sacchi. Basically, the answer to this question is personal, unless the criteria is very clearly listed. Are you going for success in terms of trophies and wins? Is it a combination of things? I don't know the answer to that.
To me, like it's the most clear measurement is trophies and wins, and it has to be prefaced by saying it's at big clubs. Like mentioning Hiddink has an interesting career that he's done well at random stints. You can't include him ultimately because the only big club he's managed is Real Madrid, and he lasted like 6 months, and that's it. And so he didn't even last the full season. Chelsea was the other one. He was an interim manager, which I guess maybe you can count as a big club. But so he can't like be considered in this conversation because he's done well with Russia, Australia, China's youth team. Like, he didn't have like the big club record.
Yeah. See, my problem with this, though, is always, and I revert back to the same example, and again, we're overlapping to another question I know is going to be posed later. Perhaps we can shoehorn it in, but Rinus Michels, that was coach of arguably the most successful Dutch side in history that made its name for itself, I don't know how to say it in English, La Mecánica Naranja, right? The orange machine. 74, 78, never won a World Cup trophy and lost against a Germany and an Argentina side that right now, Argentina, I think, was coached at the time by, I forget his name, I'm going blank. The man, he coached at Barca as well. Oh, fuck. Anyway, for example, the Germany coach right now, I'd be dumbfounded to give you an answer. I don't know who that is. So my question is, Rinus Michels never won a World Cup, won the 88th Euro Cup, mind you, with Holland. He did. And at club level right now, I don't know how successful he was with Ajax. And with Barca, it was a very difficult time. He wasn't all that successful, but he'll be certainly hailed as one of the most successful coaches, one of the best coaches of all time.
Well, so that's an interesting point. But like, so for example, Rinus Michels, is it Michels? I don't know. Like, Michels, I don't know. You always say everything in Dutch, and I don't know how to keep up with that. But
right, say like Michels.
Okay, Rinus Michels.
Good.
Thanks.
That's perfect.
He has a legacy because he has influence on many future coaches, right? Because he has an influence on Cruyff, and then it's like a family tree almost. And then from Cruyff, many people have been descendants of Cruyff. You know what I mean? So Rinus Michels has a legacy in that way, where he has influence on an entire future and an entire army of coaches. But I think in this case, you have to think about it a different way. Yeah, you know what I mean, like a philosophy, right? But I think you have to. The reason why, in my opinion, he wouldn't necessarily be among the shortlist is because it's kind of like the student has surpassed the master kind of vibes with this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Pep is a greater...
Yeah. Like a philosophy. Like,
in my opinion, like Pep
like philosophers
Pep is a greater coach than Cruyff, in my opinion, because he took what Cruyff did and gave it his own twist and won more than Cruyff did and was more successful. So in my opinion, Pep is greater than Cruyff for that reason, even though Cruyff has the importance of, essentially
instilling the seed.
Instilling the seed.
Provoking the thoughts.
Yeah.
Cesar Menotti, by the way, was the guy the coach I was looking for, the name. Menotti.
Got it.
Yeah. Well, and that's, we could be talking. Sorry, the family came home. As you can probably hear from the screams, but that's it's a good.
We got to actually move on.
You can talk for.
We got 25 minutes left.
Please.
And I just realized we have a question in the inbox too. That I think we have to take. All right, so let's fly through. Brandon Valles says, "Hey gents, who was more impressive, Jese and his spell with the Real Madrid first team, or Ansu so far?"
I mean, putting Jese and Ansu in the same sentence is an odd one for me. I find it hard to answer as well. I don't really remember. Jese came onto the scene certainly with a lot of hype behind him, and Madridistas were very excited. I don't know how successful he was at the time. So, and putting Jese's name in front of Ansu's, something crazy will have to happen for me to do that. But just not a player I can very serious, and I hope Ansu's career is not going to end up like his. So I'm sorry.
It's an interesting one, because if you compare we don't know what's going to happen with Ansu in the future as of right now. Jese's best season with Real Madrid, I closed the tab. I don't know where it went. Anyways, I remember it. His best season with Real Madrid, he had 11 goals and assists. Ansu's best season with Barca, which is small sample size, has 9 goals and assists. I'm going to lean with Jese. What happened with Jese essentially is he didn't care that much, and he got injured. It was a combination of those two things, and it's just a bad combination. He did not care about football as much as he should have, or as much as we would have liked him to. You hope Ansu won't follow that path. Exactly. If I'm a Madridista, I'm paying. If I'm Real Madrid, I'm paying Jese. I'm giving Jese a manita, or not a manita, maleta. I'm giving Jese a maleta, and I'm telling him, hey man, why don't you go take Ansu out for a week in Ibiza. See if you can rub off your influence on him a little bit, so we can make sure Ansu doesn't get to the level that he's supposed to get to.